Hello. I think that I will start. Welcome to Laser Talk Brussels, Laser Talk number 11. And today the subject of our Laser Talk will be intersecting realities, exploring the metaverse through the lens of art and science. So I would like to introduce first our panelist here. Bruno Dumas, professor at the Faculty of Computer Science at University de Namur, obtained his doctorate in 2010 from University of Freiburg, Switzerland. His doctoral thesis focuses on the creation of multimodal interfaces. As postdoc researcher at the Vrije Universiteit Brussels, he continued his work on multimodal and cross-media systems. At present, he leads the extended user interface research team focusing on human-computer interaction, multimodal interfaces, augmented reality, and digital education. Giusy Caruso, chairman of CREACI Research Group and postdoctoral artist researcher at the Royal Conservatory of Antwerp, musical advisor of the Performing Lab LTW3 Society for Data Analysis and Visualization in Milano, guest postdoctoral researcher at the Institute for Psychoacoustics and Electronic Music, University Ghent. She received her PhD in Art and Science Music Performance in 2018 at University and Royal Conservatory Ghent. First Starts Prize 2023 honorary mention together with LWT3 for Project Metaphase, a contrapuntal dialogue between a pianist and her avatar and Metaverse. She is artist, researcher, and professional concert player, orientated towards the futuristic nexus of the art, science, technology. Her research explores novel forms of human-machine interaction for the creation of XR performances, the analysis of gesture and AI, music via machine learning in co-creative project that combines music, dance, theater, and the active participation of spectators. Eric Joris is a Belgian multidisciplinary artist and stage director. In 1991, he founded CREW, pioneering research of how technology influences us and enables us to switch in real time between different worlds. Scientific fiction is an apt description of Eric Joris' modus operandi. Today, CREW is driven by two artists, Eric Joris and Isjtar van den Broek, media artist, game developer, and now technical director. Together with other returning collaborators and co-creators, they lead the audience through their visual and real spaces, integrating ordinary tablets, motion capture, suits, or scalable tracking system into digital art with the VR devices. And Peter Fries, artist name Peter M. Fries, has a background in self-organizing social systems and space technology. Besides his activities in information and communication technology innovation, he is an interdisciplinary artist and researcher with an interest in artificial intelligence and humanities. His focus is on the connection of societal changes with transdisciplinary processes. His work has been shown around the world at exhibitions and festivals. So he will be our moderator of this laser talk, and I will give the floor now to him.
Okay, I take this microphone. So good evening, my name is Peter Fries. Welcome at iMAL in space. Many thanks to iMAL for hosting us again. Welcome also online, all over the world, to people in our time zone or listening very late or very early in the morning. The title of This evening is Intersecting Realities, Exploring the Metaverse through the lens of art and science. Guess where the title comes from? Maybe it's ChatGPT, but anyway, it makes sense. The Metaverse is described as a post-reality universe, converging physical reality and digital virtuality through augmented and virtual reality. Its origins come from dystopian narratives of novels like Snow Crash from Neil Stephenson, or Ready Player One. But today, the modern interpretations are far more positive. The Metaverse is going to be beautiful and exciting. The new narratives explore the potential of the Metaverse to redefine life and society, potentially by facilitating new forms of human interaction and transcending physical limitation in our current era, the Anthropocene. However, the metamorphosis of digital realities or digital societies to the Metaverse, virtual worlds, and Web 4.0 is not devoid of challenges. Many people express concerns on societal and ethical questions concerning the meaning of life, equal access, addiction, protection of intellectual property, manipulation, and also energy consumption, because this is going to need a lot of server farms and computing power. A collaborative approach between artists and scientists could help to create an immersive, accessible, and empowering metaverse, ensuring that it remains open and diverse rather than becoming commercialized or controlled by a limited group. Maybe it's not to bring all us in the virtual world, but to bring the virtual into the real. Thank you. We start with a panel, so we have each speaker telling a bit about his and her artwork, his experience. We do this in a bit slightly fluid style, and afterwards we have circulating questions here, and we also will try to include you, like we always say, and we always try to include the audience also in a discussion, and the more active, interactive this gets, the better, I think, is for all of us, and it's very nice. Maybe I give the floor now to Bruno. I give you the microphone.
Thank you, Peter. So, hi everyone. So we decided that we would each also try to give our own vision of what the metaverse is, because that's one definite thing I think that we all agree is that the metaverse, each person almost has his or her visions, even though I think that we do converge on some aspects. So I have one presentation with some pictures. As Alexandra said, I'm a professor in computer science at the University of Namur. I lead a research group. I showed pictures of my dear researchers, mainly for one reason, is that a lot of things that I'm going to show today are actually, they contributed to it in a way or another, and it's by discussing every day with them that that actually get in the position or the state of mind that I am here. So let's start maybe with the metaverse. I quickly checked. I did this slide system between yesterday and today, and I found very quickly in our recent article, so July the 3rd, that's 2 days ago. And the title from that article, what you can see it for yourself, Lessons from the Catastrophic Failure of the Metaverse. And one thing that strikes me actually with that article is that it's talking about one metaverse in particular, the one that has been hyped a lot. That is the one from the company Meta. So you all know Mark Zuckerberg, head of the company, who has been trying to sell us this vision of a product, and a product that was supposed to allow us, for example, to go into kind of a virtual world and dance to a concert. But actually, and as Peter mentioned it, metaverse, it's not Meta and Mark Zuckerberg weren't the first ones actually to talk about this. And the origins are indeed from a novel from a writer Neil Stephenson, and the novel was published in 1992, so that's a bit more than 30 years ago. And there were already visions actually from an environment between the real and the virtual. And actually, you could already see there some correlates. And Afterwards, very quickly, virtual worlds appeared, and virtual worlds which had these all these concepts, which Meta tried to grab and try to create their own version. And we're still waiting, actually, from what would actually be their bigger vision. And actually, for me, and I like to use also this example. Maybe some of you recognized it. That's the game Pokemon Go, which you certainly heard about. You would think that apparently it's not exactly what the image of a virtual world or the way that you think about it. But actually, for me, it's much more of a metaverse than what we've seen yet, because it's a game where you use your smartphone, you walk in the city, you capture Pokemons which are around, and actually there's a link between the real world and the virtual world. You're playing with other people. Actually, at some point, it was actually quite hyped to get together and have groups of 5, 10, 50, 15, 20 or more people gathering together in some places. If you look at the center screen, you have those blue cubes, which are located actually in the environment and are linked to actual places. And those places are places where you get resources. And you get this connection between an environment which is shared by actually millions of players, and Pokemon Go is still quite popular right now. You have a connection between every gamer who share a similar experience, an experience which is close to the reality, but not exactly, and but still geographically located. And so for me, this is, in terms of what people have experienced, this is much more interesting than what Meta has been trying to sell us until now. And so I'm coming to what I like as a definition. It's actually a relatively well-known reference. And you see that the first part, which in my sense is important if you talk about metaverse and actually more metaverses than metaverse, is that there is a connection, collaboration between users. So it's more the fact that there is a social aspect to it. People will connect. Think social network, but with goals in mind, with activities. The fact that the physical reality and digital virtuality are linked with each other. So you cannot consider just a virtual world and then the real world. Both are actually virtual worlds, because there will be many of them, are part or are connected, maybe loosely connected, sometimes much more connected, but actually to reality. They are part of reality. And frequently there can actually be a lot of links. And then if you want to connect both, you need interaction. You need to, as a user, as a human, we have different ways of expressing. We have speech, gestures, emotions. These are captured by systems more and more, and they can be used to drive or be present in a virtual environment. And for me, these are the three parts which are very important. The social aspect is the core aspect. You can't imagine actually a metaverse without where you would be alone. Physical reality, digital virtuality, and the interaction. And so there's been a lot of instantiations already of kind of metaverses. So massively multiplayer online games. Maybe some of you know about World of Warcraft. That's actually very close to what we would expect from metaverse, because it's social. People will interact. They will play together. There is a link between the physical and the digital. There is interaction, and there is a shared experience too. And then you find those augmented reality collaborative spaces that Meta and more recently Apple have been trying actually to sell us. So the metaverse, the one with the little copyright next to it, which Meta has been trying to push, is actually just one of those different instantiations. And that's already something that maybe we'll get to discuss later, but can be, at least from my point of view, there will be dozens or hundreds or thousands or millions maybe of different metaverses. Very few words on what we are doing at the University of Namur. So we're not directly working on metaverse per se, but we're working a lot on augmented reality. So I would say that half of my team actually is working on with kind of digital headsets like you see on the head of that woman, which are Microsoft HoloLens headsets, where you can display digital information on top of what the user sees. But those headsets are not virtual helmets. They are actually, you can see through. There's kind of a glass in front of the user's eyes. And one thing that we've been working on, for example, is trying to get away from that terrible vision of augmented reality, where you would have so much information in front of you that you wouldn't actually see what you're doing. So this is taken from a work of art from an artist named Keiichi Matsuda. It's called Hyperreality. It's a video. You can very easily find it on YouTube. Go look at it. It's absolutely horrible and absolutely hypnotic at the same time. But what we tried is to already work on stepping away from such a terrible vision. And so we've worked a lot on ways for users to address visual clutter. So letting users have kinds of filters where you can filter out what you don't want to see, or be able to find quickly kind of information that you're looking for, and have kind of filters that you can, like you're doing on websites where you're doing a search and you have those little filters. Well, we use that, but in an augmented mixed reality environment. Another thing that we've been working on is what we call immersive analytics. So when you have complex visualizations, 3D visualizations, if you look them at screens, actually they're relatively hard to read because you're looking at 3D on a 2D screen. But when you have the object in a 3D environment, that you can go around it and look at it at different points from different points of view, it gets much richer. Third thing that we've been working on, and it's actually one of the core directions in my lab, is what we call augmented physicality, and that is bringing back the physical with virtual elements. So, for example, bridging, that's the picture at the left, bridging between real documents and virtual documents. And then what we've been doing also recently is trying to bring some touch to virtual elements. So make sure that you can get them, that you have objects that have actually a role as much in the virtual environment and in the real environment. And there I have had a student who worked in modeling different planets and objects, and all those were as much 3D objects that you would see through on a mixed reality helmet, and there were objects too. And there would be a match and you could exchange them. Okay, so that's about it on my side. I think that I'm going to leave the floor to you.
So good evening, the audience in presence and the audience online. Thank you, Peter and Alexandra, for inviting me in these laser talks that regards the intersecting between art, science and technology. So I'm Giusy Caruso. I'm a classical pianist, but also researcher. And today I would like to explain, to present how and why a classical pianist should work with digital technology and go to the metaverse. So to explain this, I have to go back to my PhD work I made in Ghent, at the University in Ghent, the Institute for Psychoacoustic and Music Electronics, in collaboration with the Royal Conservatory of Ghent. So actually, the goal of my PhD was to analyze music performance practice, and especially the correlation between just gestural movements of a pianist in relation to the interpretation and sound results. So normally musicians, to do this, use technological tools like 2D tools like video cameras to observe, evaluate gestures while playing. But to do a research and to have an external feedback on music performance practice, to understand the process of embodiment and the embodied music cognition, so how musicians move in relation to the intentionality. To achieve this goal, I used the motion capture system. So this system that can capture gestures while playing with the infrared cameras, and can also give not only the visualization of an avatar or a sticky figure like this, but also measurements. So measurements regarding gestures and to make then in correlation to the sound results with other software like Sonic Visualizer. So during my PhD, I discovered the possibilities to use motion capture and to work with my avatar. Because this augments the possibility to have an observation of yourself playing in different positions and took other measurements. So with the group in Ghent, we developed a performer-based analysis method and also a paradigm of technology-enhanced mirror. So how technology can be a tool to augment the visualization and music analysis and analysis of a performance practice. After my PhD, I continue working with technology, the motion capture in Ghent at the ASIL lab. And together with colleagues Babo van Kerbroek and Professor Peter Jan Meijs, we made some experiments, empirical experiments, to see how musicians can interact in a virtual world. So using the motion capture system, but also the headset, the VR headset, and to study body interaction in a virtual world and social presence. So the output of this research was actually explained in scientific articles published by Frontiers. This is a scientific journal. And the title of this article is a methodological framework for assessing social presence in music interactions in virtual reality. But actually, the goal then as a performer as well was to bring motion capture in performance. So to use these tools not only as a biofeedback tool to work with for music analysis, but also as a performative tool to augment the perception of a musical performance in relation to the audience perspective and perception of music performance. And I started this collaboration with the LWT3 Society in Milano for data analysis and data visualization. The first project we presented in Milano during Piano City in 2019, and then at the Museum of Science and Technology in 2020 was Avatar Piano Project. Actually, it was an augmented performance, me playing with motion capture and with my avatar projected in a screen. So the audience could attend an augmented performance, not only me playing in real time, but also the projection of my avatar from different perspectives. So after these experimentations in real time during the performance, we started experimenting in VR, a performance completely in VR. And so I started working with the Metaverse and be projected in the Metaverse. And we started this other project, Metaphase. Metaphase is a word that means in biology the cell divisions, the cell duplications. So it was what happened to me. So the duplication of myself with my avatar that embody actually my gestures, my expressivity. And we used a particular repertory by the American composer Steve Reich, the piece Piano Phase for two pianists, and we elaborated another project, a real project during my, the project that I'm finishing at the Royal Conservatory of Antwerp, Tactile project, where I explored gestural interactive technology, a biofeedback technology. This project is within the groups Creasi and Max Lab. And together with LWT3, so we elaborated this performance, a contrapuntal dialogue between a pianist and their avatar in the Metaverse, because the goal of this performance, of this experimentation actually was to interact with my avatar. So we pre-recorded my corporeal expression and also the audio of the first part of this piece by Steve Reich, and I played in real time, projected in the virtual world, so in the metaverse, playing with my avatar, and I played the second part of the piece. So this is the group in Milano: Paolo Beluco, engineer, and Samuele Polissina, designer, and Andrea Randone, who are developer. And we made the first performance in Cremona during the festival, International Musical Exhibition in Cremona in 2022. So as you can see in this image, actually I was projected in the virtual world, so in the metaverse, and the metaverse was for me a way to extend the performance space. So I started performing in a virtual world, interacting with the second pianist that actually was the avatar of myself. So the audience could attend the performance and see me playing in real time and with the other avatar, and everything was projected on a screen. But the day after, by wearing the VR headset, they could also attend the performance pre-recorded the day before. So it was actually the possibility to enter in the metaverse and to attend the performance in post-production. So I would like to show you a brief video from this performance in Cremona.
Giusy Caruso is not only a very, very good and interesting and innovative pianist and artist, but is also researching in the fields of multimedia and metaverse and everything which can happen also in virtual world.
Not only songs, but all the posture of the performer, and we stitch together that are in sync. She can interact with herself.
This performance in VR, me playing with my avatar in real time.
We are using the market-based object system to retrieve the kinematics of the movement, but trying now to use electromyography, a technique that can retrieve information from muscle contraction in order to discover not only the kinematic of the movement, of the dynamics and the effort of the muscle, in order to create a more precise model of the movement and the musician.
So this was the performance in Cremona. It was a phygital performance because both I was in real time playing, so physically, and also projected in VR. So this combination. And for the future, I'm now working. It is a preliminary work, actually to use the performance space and the virtuality, the virtual reality, for a preservation of cultural heritage. So actually there is particular building called Danteum by the architect Giuseppe Terragni, and this is a building that was not built then in the 14 because of political issues. So now the idea is to reconstruct the building and to make a performance inside of this building that is related to the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, the poet. So each room has a particular relation to each place of the Divine Comedy. So this is my project, and thank you for your attention. And now I give the floor to the crew.
So I'm Eric Joris from Crew. There is 3 of us here. There is Hario sitting over there. He's the developer. There's Isjtar. Isjtar and myself are driving the artistic concepts. Crew has been active in, let's say, technological art or art science, whatever you call it, since the early 90s and on from 2003 into virtual reality. So let me open our presentation. So when we speak about the metaverse, I tend to think that this is maybe as old as the human brain in terms of, so this idea of to transport your body into other worlds, into other bodies, is something that you'll find back in any myth, whether it be Indian, Greek, or Celtic. So it's a very old idea in itself. And since we are in EU projects and many times technological research projects, we are right now into one in which we are in classical metaverse, so to say, meaning that you are behind a screen or you have your telephone and you're steering your avatar in a 3D world. Let's say that is the disembodied solution to a metaverse, as I would say, and this is how we see the metaverse. That is embodied with other people, many people inside, physically moving into spaces, large spaces, and to dealing with other people that are real, not real, all these kind of things. But in a way that something is happening. So it's embodied. Our background is in theater, so that explains something. Something needs to happen all the time. So it doesn't need to be spectacular, but there needs to be something to, it's not just visual looking around, so something needs to happen. So this is in the past, in the first years, we had our own type of VR system developed together with the University of Hasselt. And this was the good breeding ground to find out how does it work? What is the body inside? How are many bodies inside? And one of the things that came out of it is the world in between is the most interesting one. The world that we call transitional. So the idea of building a purely illusion where, oh, I have the illusion of being there, that's not the interesting part. It's being in between of the two worlds that's interesting, and the shifting in between. So that's a transitional thing. It's this in-betweeners, as you can also call it, that is interesting. The fact that it's interesting was that from the moment on we started thinking like this, we immediately had very strange effects, like the out-of-body thing, that kind of things. They surfaced when we stepped away from that idea of illusion. So it's when we started making things slow and also, you can call it transitional. You can also say it's transcending space and body in a way. We have been experimenting long distance by satellite, by possessing the body of the other, doing things together, using the body of the other. So all those things were not only interesting, but we did learn a lot of it out of it. And yeah, it's a very particular feeling. I mean, it produces something that you cannot explain, describe, or show, or something like that. So, and then it becomes like, right, if it produces something that is only happening inside of that particular medium. So we have some simple rules that we use for this embodied world. Don't be seated, in fact, never be seated. And since that is not easy in this type of environments where you need to track the the immersant, as we call the person who is being immersed. We had to go into development of our own system or producing a concept that is then being developed by other people inside of these programs, as you can see here. And yeah, so this is a bit more of that. And then the last thing is, the interesting thing is how to populate this world. I think Isjtar will also tell something about this. We have avatars, we have intelligent avatars, so who are doing things that react to you. We have scenes that happen, but that also adapt to you, so the whole world reacts to you being there. There is a kind of liveness that is different from any other medium. We have one of the key principles of everything that we do is also it need to be live. So there always need to be involved live performers or actors. We prefer the word performers. Always someone live who drives or influences the action inside and builds up a dialogue with you. Who that is going to be, you don't know, because he can take the body of any avatar or a part of any avatar, or it can make them repetitive. You can play with this kind of thing, which is what we call the Greek chorus principle. And we are working on something. You can see it in the right bottom. So there are already quite complicated scenes with only one actor. I think that's it. Yes.
Yeah, so the idea that we have of the Greek chorus is that there's actually not really a reason why in the virtual one performer should have one body. So the idea is that people can possess different bodies and one actor can actually be in many places all at once, interact with agents and influence the entire social aspect of the virtual world that you're in. Yeah, I know it's kind of weird. But so for the Maxar project that we are in, we also do an online part, so a more classical metaverse type of thing, and it is very challenging because. Wait, let me just get my presentation going up. Yeah, so it's very challenging because we tried a number of things and a lot of things which are hyped and online events by companies and all these type of things, and in general, they try the more optimistic they try to sell it, the more dystopian it becomes in a way. So for now, we are developing on virtual things, but we try to take a step back and realize like what can work in this type of space, like why are they boosting all these ideas and what could we actually do? And as Bruno rightly remarked, this type of thinking has been going on for a long time. So what is new? If it's just marketing hype, or is there actually something substantial? So in the industry, there are two visions. I'm not going to explain the meta one, which everybody knows, but which has a lot of contradictions. I don't know if you had been in VR, but the idea that you're in VR all the time is not very pleasant. And it's very top down. So I will come back to that. The idea before we had like things like the web, which had like creativity, it always came from the bottom up, and then companies took over and it died. Now we start already from this company dominance, which is very problematic on the creative aspect. And then there's Epic Games, which has actually a more interesting view. They kind of just create tools for people to create. So there's now a link between Fortnite and creating your own things. They provide services and they will actually pay you to create things. So they actually make an economy. So that already sounds amazing. It's also not necessarily in VR. It's more like a screen-based thing. So that is cool. So it is in a way bottom up, they give you the tools to do it, but they will also define the terms. So for example, if you want to do an experimental performance, if you cannot afford their service that you want of having your mocap data in, you cannot do it. You can make a shooter game or something like that, but you cannot really go much further than that. So I talked about these perspectives. I'm not going to go in detail, but so VR is very attractive to researchers because it has very interesting phenomena, but it doesn't really work well in a home setting. So this idea that you're at home, that you have a headset and that you're in all kinds of virtual worlds and that you forget where you are, it doesn't really work, which is why we work on these very site-specific ideas and with physical aspects and all that. And then you have the shooter-based things, which don't go much farther than that. And then you have the third-person screen-based things, which is what Epic tries to promote, which are actually interesting. So I was reading an article yesterday. The amount of immersion and embodiment in a third-person screen-based thing, so you have like an avatar walking in front of you, is not necessarily lower than in VR. So this is something to keep in mind. So then the question is, okay, we have all this hype, but what can we do as artists? Yeah, so you can do online performances. This kind of exists. You can have virtual exhibition spaces. It kind of exists. You can do artistic use of existing technologies. That could be fun. I will show an example in a minute. Then you have these persistent worlds and identities. Okay, you can have Second Life, but most people are not into this type of stuff. It's very niche. It's not something that most people want to engage in their daily life in a way. And then there's, of course, we always had the dream of having independent infrastructure. Us, in my previous organizations, we had independent servers and all these type of things. But from an art perspective, we just live in a too precarious situation. We do not have the funds to keep this going, to keep this updated on a technological and other level. So is this what we want to do? It's really a question of why do we want to do something in this space and what can it be? And so this, for example, Hamlet's Playground, I will show it very quickly. Okay, very quickly. So Hamlet's Playground is an online performance we did. I will show it just very quickly so you get an idea. But it's a 2D space. I will turn off this. I will make the sound lower. It's a 2D space in which we kind of made an interaction with actors who accompany you, who try to make a show, a performance, and people can interact with it in different ways on a commercially available platform. So we can use filters, we can have
Hamlet's Playground. Better to stay close to your guide. Now, your guide might, if they remember, have their hand up.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, so you can see it's very important for the performers to mediate the performance, because otherwise people get lost. It's very intensive, but it was very successful.
I wouldn't like to be in James I's head, if you ask me. Now, in the bottom left-hand corner of this revenge painting is another painting. It's a painting within a painting.
I can't go into details now, but it worked very well. The thing is, so you work in this technology on a commercial platform, you have to pay, you can develop it, and very soon you're going to encounter creative difficulties in the sense that you can make it, but if you want to expand it, it's not really possible because you're on this platform and you don't control it. And so, yes, and so at the end, so this is very interesting. So, and this is very important. So the essence of the metaverse is that it's something social. And so we also noticed that at the end of the performance, there was a bar where people could meet each other and talk.
But during the pandemic, so...
Yes, that's very important. Yes, and they had very good conversations and a good time, and actually people stayed longer in the bar than the performance was supposed to last. But it is true that this shows that even in these online worlds where most people would normally not engage, if you take them in some kind of world in a performance, afterwards they feel a connection and they can start interacting, which is not trivial. Yeah, and so the thing is, the people who really have meaningful online experiences are usually gamers. Now, I'm not myself a very good gamer, but I was analyzing it and looking at it, and people spend hundreds of hours online, and they have really, truly what you would call meaningful experiences. And the thing is now with the metaverse, people try gamification, so things like rankings and competitions and everything, on an otherwise kind of nude experience, which is not very interesting. And I think this will make it, but that's not true. In these games, there's something very specific, a core activity that engages these people. It's not just about the winning or something like this. And this is something which is completely misunderstood by all the marketing people. And like all good art, I think it also does not, it's not one size fits all. So you have people who are more into this. It's very niche based. And so this idea that we can make one metaverse which will please everybody is not very fruitful. And so the social is essential, but when analyzing these games, it's like social media. It can be extremely toxic, but like extremely toxic. I can put this in. There's racism. It's horrible. And so I was looking for games which do not have this problem, but which actually evoke very positive feelings. And there are a number of games like Journey, Death Stranding, and also Minecraft in a way. And the key is to limit the communication. If you just let people talk to each other in whatever way they can, it becomes horrible immediately. A bit like social media, which is very toxic. But if you limit the way they can communicate, which we also noticed in Delirious Departures, our installation, the fact that they cannot say everything creates a kind of mystery and a more rich interaction. I'm not going to show the video, but for example, in this game, Journey, which is a game where you are guided by a more experienced player, People, I mean, if I would ever make an artwork and people would put this kind of comments, that would be amazing. I don't know if you can read it, but it's people, for example, a person who was diagnosed with cancer that that is so happy that he had the chance to have this experience. So the idea that people are gaming and doing whatever, these are really profound experiences, and I've seen nothing in the proposed metaverse which comes even close to this kind of interaction. So this is the question, where do we want to go? It is also not a game. Gamers have very specific skills. They come from somewhere very specific. Their taste varies a lot. And when you put people in some kind of metaverse construction, their first reaction, if it's not a game, is, what am I doing here? What am I supposed to do? And we need, as artists, to find solutions for this, because just putting people in the virtual for its sake doesn't make any sense. And so we've noticed, of course, that just putting concerts in the virtual and this type of thing doesn't work. And also you can make very beautiful environments, but the state of wonder, it just goes away. So you need to find something more substantial to do in this type of works. And this is what we are thinking about right now. Well.
So thank you so much. I guess, at least myself, I could listen for hours and I discovered new things. I know part of your artwork, I have been participating, and the performances, fantastic. And what also happened, I shared a bit my ideas of questions, and they have already been answered. So now I can ask the participants to repeat, or I try to invent some new ones. Let me start like that. I think you all have a positive take, whatever metaverse, in the way you define it, you describe it, could be. And potentially you are aware where it should go, but I felt also you're curious to say it's not yet super defined. There are so many possibilities. There is endless metaverse, endless several. So potentially the sky is the limit. What is interesting is that compared to what some companies start to do now, a bit saying the VR or the metaverse goes a bit more into maybe AR, that's important. But you say directly, we start from the embodiment, we start from social interaction, right? And maybe we start from meaningfulness where we do not expect it, right? So we always think gaming is, well, it's super, and people find happiness in the way they express themselves, they can access, talk to people where they cannot do otherwise. I was wondering, can you give a quick shout what you don't want metaverse to be, that we are clear tonight what metaverse should not be? You can have this microphone. What the metaverses should not be. Everybody can start, please.
Okay, maybe I can start. I think that the vision of the vision that has been pushed, that the Meta has been pushing, would be a good start of a lot of things that, at least personally, I wouldn't want. And I remember actually one ad that they showed, that Meta was showing to promote their metaverse, and you would see a meeting room with 3 persons in the meeting room, and each person was wearing a VR headset, and they were all smiling, and they were literally next to each other, like you are right there. And this, there's absolutely no sense there, because once again, for me, the vision of when you create a virtual environment where you want to people to do something, be it gaming or something else, there's an activity, there's a social activity. Actually, it's some kind of, maybe it's a bit reductory, but an evolution of the kind of experience that social networks have been giving us, good and bad connections. So I would say that feeling alone, and especially when there are people literally around you, would be a very good start. I don't know if someone else wants to pitch in.
Yes, please.
Yeah, for me, as an artist, I would like to remain in the metaverse as an artwork. So the gaming is a thing, but for me, the metaverse for artists is more an extension for the performance space. And a way actually to engage the audience and the spectators for a more participative action. So this is my goal for the future as well, because in my project, as you have seen, I used the metaverse to start interacting with my avatar, and then the audience was there attending, but not in the virtual environment. So next goal is to implement also the spectators in, and to do some more interactive performances where spectators have participative role, a co-creative role. So, yeah.
Isjtar?
Yeah, well, I think so it kind of has the opposite of what's presented in a way. So I think it's interesting to connect people who are isolated, but not to isolate people who are connected. And this is, it should not be something which is like, the idea it has to be pervasive in life is something I'm very much against. So we saw a presentation by Meta in Laval. And so, for example, you are wearing your thing and everything is being analyzed. And so if you put salt, they really showed this. So you put salt in your water when you're cooking pasta, you put salt in your water. And then when you do it again, there will be like a sign over your pasta to say you already did it. And they actually thought this was a good thing. It's amazing. And but it's also true that there's people who are isolated and it can be very positive. So, but the thing is really how, I'm mostly worried about the fact that this space is immediately taken over, and it was never something which came from society like the web came or like email came, but something which is immediately projected from the top down. And even with the web, it's a completely dead space creatively. Social media is completely dead. So I'm afraid we cannot win it in a way. That's my concern.
Erik? There's some physicality involved.
Well, it goes in the same direction. I think in order to make it commercially successful, because these are big commercial companies, it needs to be massive. It needs to enter everybody's personal space. And that's, of course, what most of us won't like, that you would be solicited all the times in this medium. And the idea that everything can connect to everything, which is the main idea of the metaverse idea, is, of course, at the same time is what I would personally don't like. And just as Isjtar already mentioned, I think the potential of a thing we don't know yet, so it should be experienced, it should be worked with. The role of the arts is really a huge role, I think, to work with and to find out what it can produce that other media cannot. And I think that's the way to go forward. And as long as it is driven by marketing, it's you will maybe not arrive where you will be. And as you can see from the presentation, I suppose many people saw the keynote presentation of Mark Zuckerberg, and there was also lately the last month the Apple presentation. The image of the person enjoying it is really an extremely passive one. There's always people sitting in lounge chairs and things like that. It's a very passive one. And at the same time, I think the truth is exactly in the opposite direction. But of course, that is the way we think about it cannot be commercially and certainly not massively worthwhile. So there is not a very good business model behind. But so that's not the way media grow. It was the same with cinema in the beginning, and with many media. So.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. I feel a fear. There's of course the reality. The reality is the big tech companies. There are platforms. They have marketing purposes, and to some extent, they will make their vision happen. Potentially, a good example might be the new Apple headset. I think, however, what I feel from you, you are also all a bit rebel in a positive sense, in an engaging sense. And of course, we are in a reality. I think you are in the reality, the way you perform, the way you teach, you do research. We can always be against the platform or in favor of it. We need to cope or not to cope. At the same time, there are many possibilities and alternative ways, or even parallel things that to some extent we cope with the big platform metaverses, whatever it is, maybe it's useful and necessary, and to some extent do something else, right? My question would now be, I would give you a bit of money and a bit of time. What would you do? Because it's not yet there, and sometimes many possibilities. What would you do in the next 1 to 2 years to explore a metaverses, augmented physicality, that it would make sense for you, but also be open to engage? Of course, you could say you do more performances, but I think we talked a bit before. You're also mentioning the critical infrastructure. We're mentioning that artists per se don't have maybe the means, at least not alone, to create all those platforms. So you have 2 years, you have a bit of money. How would you try to advance, potentially not alone, in a team, in a transversal team, to make any kind of good metaverse happen?
I can immediately answer to that, or we can. Yeah, so that is, we should build an infrastructure in which we can easily work, and that is built upon the real potential of this kind of worlds. And in the arts, we can do that. It is not what commercially would be the most interesting, because they would prefer you to use your iPhone, or prefer you to use your apartment or your home or things like that. But that's the way we would like to see going forward, and to act with people who are here, who are somewhere else, but also in physical spaces, and that we do things together that are meaningful, of course. So we and experiment with that. So.
Yeah, and to add to that, so I know I'm going to contradict myself from earlier, because I said that we never managed to get this critical infrastructure in the arts in the long term, which is true. But at the same time, because we are in these research projects, we are now acquiring the knowledge and the know-how how to put things online like this in the cloud and all these things which are very mysterious to people, and to make templates and to share them for other people. We cannot run it for them, but at least we can acquire the knowledge and give it to people and support them in some ways, so that people do get empowered in some sense. So that's.
Bruno?
Yeah, that was a good question. Made me think for a little moment. But I would join you actually in a project that would empower users, because definitely that's. I fully join everyone there in the fact that a vision pushed fully pushed by big companies has little future in itself. But one possibility, one thing that could be interesting to do, because we have this vision of the virtual headsets and needing to create environments, but actually there was a time when Samsung was selling like little cardboards like that you would put your Samsung smartphone in them, and that you could use then the smartphone as a VR headset, a relatively cheap one, but it was your phone. You already owned it, and the cardboard, the little cardboard set needed to transform your phone in a VR headset was literally $5 or something like that. So you can actually do on the cheap virtual reality. That's one thing. And the second thing, and I was coming back to the fact that actually what makes a virtual world a likable virtual world, and I think that it's the fact that there will be stories in them. Now I was actually thinking during your presentation and the definition of immersion, and actually there are two different definitions of immersion. There is the sensory immersion, the fact that you're feeling, that you're hearing, and that what you're seeing is realistic. And this is the fact that every channel, every modality in your body is used at best as possible to make sure that what you're seeing, feeling, hearing is as realistic as possible, that you feel like you're part of the world. But actually there is a second kind of immersion, and this one is a psychological immersion. And this immersion is the one that each and every one of us feels when they're watching a very interesting movie or TV series. It's the moment when you are in the story. that you feel like you're part of actually the environment of what is being told to you. And these are two different. This is the moment actually when your brain is like, okay, this is a world in which I'm now part in, and you can definitely have this psychological immersion while watching your TV when the story is good enough. And the best experiences are the ones that connect the sensory immersion and the psychological immersion. And so the question becomes, how do you create, well, sensory immersion? Well, that's with high quality headset, whatever. That's the part where big companies have been leaving a lot of money. But the psychological immersion is based on the story. And so how do you make sure that someone might create good stories? And there's maybe a lesson to be taken from Minecraft. So you mentioned Minecraft. Minecraft is actually, so it's a video game where you're in a world made up of cubes, and you create whatever you want in that world, and it's been quite popular. Maybe some of you have kids or children who have played Minecraft, because it's been very popular with children. And if you have like an equivalent of a VR Minecraft, which can be accessed on the cheap and makes you create stories, environments. And there I'm going to jump back to my experience as a computer scientist. You certainly, each and every one of you heard about ChatGPT. So this tool that creates stories. Well, AI can create images too. And maybe you've seen that, but AI can also create 3D objects. And if you have the possibility to type, for example, a story, and the 3D objects of that story populate your worlds, then you can create stories. So that's what I would do. I'm not sure it would use a little bit of money and only 1 year, but that would be the direction.
Thank you.
Sorry, talked a lot.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. No, accordingly with them, actually, I will use to create easy-to-use technology for musicians, for example, because also to develop this paradigm of technology-enhanced mirror, that technology can help musicians in researching, but also in performing and in the evaluation of the performance, and composers as well, in composing something. So, for example, I don't know, a particular technology that can reproduce an orchestra. Sometimes as a pianist, I need also to rehearse with orchestra, but it's not too easy to find orchestra just to rehearse. So I was imagining an orchestra of avatars that can accompany a real pianist and can help also in playing. So I think that the future is really to develop new platform, a new easy-to-use technology for not only for users, but also in the artistic part for musicians. This is my idea.
Okay, thank you very much. So I try to find some money and then see in 2 years. Before I open up to the audience, I have a final question for you, not too long, or just a few arguments. There's a lot of reflection, critical reflection, fear about the metaverse to a high extent being computer-generated worlds where potentially AI is working as it needs to be done fast and specific. Also, of course, it means that per se disinformation and fake is part a bit of the thing. And maybe there's also a bit linked, I feel a bit more, some artists are a bit careful, it's about the creativity, or world's already there, a lot is already prepared. At the same time, a lot of data tracked, so you might have an artist, a creative idea, and it's directly captured by the glasses, whatever, and moves on. And I think we cannot ignore that. At the same time, we cannot say, because it's like that, we stop. So what would be your balanced, critical take on this metaverse being a challenging thing for artist creativity, the agency, problems of what is true, fake, maybe referencing between what is maybe a sort of truth or not, and what is just immersive and imagination. So maybe you would have a few words on that.
Yeah, so there's I don't know if you're aware, but a while ago, it was reported, and everybody knew, but didn't kind of know, that there were already tons and tons of videos generated on YouTube for children, and nobody really noticed because it's for children, and it's it's years and years of content which is auto-generated and which nobody really notices. And I think this was the first step. So yeah, because of all these evolutions, we are in the beginning of an avalanche of content. Yeah, this is just going to happen. I'm not really sure whether I have a solution for that, but yeah, we're going to have to deal with that. I expect that handmade work and everything will again be, or physical things, or this is also the reason why it's interesting to do site-specific things and not like there's this idea of making everything virtual and that you can just download it and everybody can have this, which becomes very empty. It's almost yeah, a return to the original artwork or something, which is weird. But it is true that you want to make more specific things because in all this generality there's no person or soul or something physical. But if you do performance, you're always in the moment doing something in a moment in time. So then you don't really have this issue in a way, I think. So that kind of solves it.
Okay. Anybody else? Bruno, you are very close to the microphone, so maybe.
Yeah, on that question, I'm not exactly sure how to answer it, honestly. Also, because I just mentioned that we can see right now novel tools for content creation and rather easy content creation. Well, I was mentioning ChatGPT. ChatGPT is for text, but we have the same for pictures. We are seeing the same arrive for videos, and once again, 3D objects can also be generated by AI. And maybe you've seen the first pictures of generated by AIs, which were like 1 year ago, and you could directly spot they were generated by an AI because, well, for example, hands of characters had like 6 or 7 fingers, or 4 faces were absolutely not realistic at all. But that was 12 months ago. Right now, I've seen examples generated by AIs which they look like pictures from cameras. And in the coming years, in all different types of media, this is what is coming to happen. And now the question is, what is true? I really don't have an answer there. And maybe we'll have to redefine actually what's virtually true. Maybe.
Okay. Very good.
I leave the question mark. I really don't have an answer.
Okay. Thank you.
So in a digital world, everything is being constructed. I remember in the 80s, when the first digital cameras came out, there was an initiative that wanted to give a label to every picture that had been digitally produced or worked on. Which, if you think about it now, is like, what? Every image is now digital. Every image is being processed, rendered. Every image. So it's all construct. So there is no reality in the sense that there is another reality, type of reality. But then, in terms of we need to deal with this, just like anything you see on the internet. I mean, yeah, you need to have confirmation to trust the person who has been filming this, the source, etc., etc. And in the project we are in now, it is a major topic, and there's a security company inside, so that is making software so that you can identify who is on the other side. But this again brings in interesting questions: are you anonymous or not? Do I have the right to know who you are because I want to protect myself? If you are speaking as a nice young woman to me, am I sure that you are the person you are saying to be? I have a right to know that. On the other hand, the other person has also the liberty to hide his own identity, which is nice about the avatars. So there's a whole ethical thing or etiquette to be built up, but there are ways to protect each other so that you can interact with each other on another basis, at least on a basis of trust. And on VR chat, I have seen really touching examples of people who go into the most weirdest type of interactions, and in real life are very, very different persons. So that means that inside this medium, they are free to do with each other whatever. So there must be a possibility, but then still you need to be able to trust the other side. So, yeah.
Okay. Giusy, any take on it, or yeah?
No, the things that with AI we can generate everything. We can generate images, we can generate music, and concerning authorship, actually, we cannot generate through AI empathy. So I think this is the live things that we have to take into account. So artworks are made by artists, and we imprint in them empathy and for the communication with the audience, so and with spectators. So I think the authorship can be linked to this idea of empathy.
Isjtar, yes.
Yes, if I can comment on that, because when the AI image generation, generative AI thing came, I was fascinated. So I went on this thing, and effectively, like all these things come out. You just put a phrase, and then you get all these weird images, which is kind of cool. But then I thought, okay, we need this at Crew. So I downloaded software of one of these AI things, Stable Diffusion, and I started making things. And then I realized, wait, I could not get anything resembling anything good out of it. And so I started looking up, so how does it work? And very quickly you come to the fact that actually these things that we use online, they are actually pre-programmed by artists to give certain results in a certain style. And so if you have the software yourself, you actually have to learn the skills. It's just that these skills are now textual instead of manual, but you can very easily recognize who does what at some point because it's just another tool in that sense. So, and then you see again the imprint of the artist in that way.
Okay, thank you. And of course, it's known a lot behind AI is actually HI, human intelligence, working controlling it. I think we not only have a fantastic panel, but I think we have also a fantastic audience, mixed appearance, I think certainly mixed experiences in VR, Metaverse, image generation, ChatGPT or not, or whatever. I would like to invite you to ask a question. What would interest you if you think about iMetaverse, the-metaverses, your activities? What would you ask the panelists? We have a microphone, so don't be shy. And because I know if you're in the audience, if nobody starts, I might pick somebody. Yes, please.
Okay, so we've been talking about the technical challenges for us artists to access these environments, etc. About all the open source, maybe tools that are needed for artists to really appropriate the technology and be able to express whatever they want to say in these metaverses. But there's also, I think, a cultural challenge within this field, which is where do we draw the line between what's art and what's entertainment? Because if we do not create the right artistic, if we don't generate the right content in terms of critical and creative and critically approached, also critically based content, it's true that the mass, the audience will start just consuming as we always do with technology. So where's the cultural challenge and what can we do from the arts?
So where do we draw the line? Who likes to pick it?
Yeah. Well, it's a very difficult one. Yeah, because as in history, it's always very difficult to make a pure distinction. Pop art was very popular in the beginning, and now so it's very difficult to distinguish. So, but the intentions as artists are kind of clear. So we want to communicate and create these kind of things. So you're looking for an audience. That's at least what we do. So you want to install a contact. That's where when you progress, it's not just to entertain you, to make you laugh, or to make you pay, or something like that. But there is nothing wrong with entertainment. So I don't see it as a critique upon entertainment. But I'm saying now kind of evident things. We should be able to come up with something more critical.
Maybe. Yeah, Bruno is just jumping, and then we come back to you.
So I have an advantage. I'm not an artist, so I might say something very stupid, but hopefully I'll be excused. But I feel like this. Well, a metaverse that would be created by yourself, or you would rely on something that existing, in the end is still just a tool. And as much as a pen and a sheet of white paper will be a tool for an artist, a very complex system like the one that you used actually to do the performances, the beautiful performances that you showed, were a tool that let you elicit emotions, thought, shock maybe. So in the end, I guess that you could do art with a MetaQuest headset from Meta. Or not? Is it a good... I leave you that question.
Eric is back. I think, yes.
Very good. We're helping each other, so this is the perfect way. Yeah, so in fact, to go back to what is going to be the position of artists in this world, because it's because you are talking about storytelling and this, like, but what we feel when we work with this, all this disappears a bit. There's no place for real storytelling. There is no the authentic, the unique type of artist. He will find it very difficult to. It will be more curating worlds, and it's not like come and enjoy what I have been making or so. It will be difficult. So there is something else as an artist. So you will need another type of artist and artists in the plural, I think. So it's a very difficult thing. We still need to find the way what can be the art part in terms of what is your position. It will not be just making the beautiful things or telling the beautiful stories. It will be something different. It's curating the experience, curating the world in which you are, but it's a different thing. Well, so.
Actually, I have a different take on that. I think any medium can be used for whatever. The problem is really the channels of communication. So what you saw with social media is when social media came on the scene, the same as website, there was very creative atmosphere. It was very open and it was very simple to find your audience. But of course, these companies, they want to control the flow of information. And so they make it significantly more difficult to find your audience. And you have to pay and all these things, which automatically levels towards the big players and so towards entertainment. And so the question you have here, and this is kind of where, as I mentioned before, video games kind of work well, is that they are very specific towards niches, and because these people are very engaged in their niches and in their community, they can actually find the things. But it will be very hard for people who are not that far in a community which is very specialized to build like these critical audiences and these things where they can actually, an artist needs an audience. If you do not communicate, it doesn't happen. So you can make amazing things and get grants or whatnot, but this will be the challenge, and they control the channels of communication. So.
Yes. Yes, but in these worlds, the position of the user will be, he will have more agency. That's when it works better. If you give more agency, then your position as an artist becomes immediately very different. So it's no longer.
But he has to find it. He has to be there.
Yeah. But so it will be a different thing. But so to handle the agency, the autonomy, it's a doing thing. This world. So you need to do things. It's not just following and look and so. So to generate and to handle that will be, that's probably where the art will be. But
okay. Yeah. I feel there will be some after talk in crew after the laser talk. Giusy, you also had an idea, please.
Yes, no, in the sense that with Metaface, this project, I experiment for the first time how I can interact with the audience in another way, not in a classical way, but with the aid of technology. And then for me was a discover, because it was really an experience of entertainment in a way, because you see me in the metaverse, especially the youngest audience were very engaged in this, especially the day after they came, they wanted to see. It was a way for me to also disseminate outputs, scientific outputs, artistic outputs, in the sense that the audience knows this process of embodiment, because all the performance had this dramaturgy where I try to explain and to guide the audience on how an avatar can be built through the motion capture, and how can take the expressivity and the corporeal expressivity of a performer. So for me, actually the use of technology in my performances were for two purposes, so scientific and artistic dissemination as well. And the public engagement gave me a good results at the end, so happy.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we have a question online, if I got it. Yes, please.
Yes, we have online question. This is the person, his name is BVK. The question is, isn't this metaverse term problematic in the sense that we are already transitioning in and out our physical and virtual selves on a daily basis? How many people today are capable of resisting the temptation to enter virtual worlds when, for example, taking a boring bus ride?
Okay, thank you very
This
much.
is our internet question.
Thank you. Who would like to take it? Yes, please.
Sure. Well, it's good. That's a very good question. Right now, at this point in time, there is a very simple answer to that question. VR and virtual reality headsets and augmented reality headsets and mixed reality headsets are heavy. You don't wear them for 1 hour. Or if you do, you'll feel it. And it was also quite interesting. For example, well, we did mention for Apple, and when they maybe you saw the Vision Pro headset that Apple presented like a few weeks ago, and they did one technical choice, which was that the battery, there is like an external battery, which is like this pack that you have lying next to you and that you have to connect. And they did that simply just to try to remove as much weight as possible. So that's the situation right now. Now, in a few years, might happen point in time where VR or XR headsets are easy or not too hard to wear. And would they replace phones? Actually, I'm not too sure. There was a researcher in the 90s, and obviously my memory is missing me, so I can't remember right away his name. But he was a researcher in ubiquitous computing, so a field which has mostly disappeared. And what he posited is that so his theory was that so in the 70s in computer science, you had like these very big computers which were mainframes, which were supposed to do computing, like scientific computing or computing for the government or for big companies. And then in the 80s arrived the era of the personal computer, the PC. PC is for one computer, one user. And now we are in an era, in the third era, where actually computers are all around us. So each of us has a smartphone. Some of you might have smartwatches too. We have a few computers lying around, and these are many computers for each of us in that room. And he was talking about the fact that you would have at some point more and more and transparent, and computers would become also more transparent in their environment. That is to say that the way to access virtual information, and be it virtual worlds, metaverses, or just your favorite social network, or even Word or Excel, would become less and less present. And I think that once again, coming back to Apple, they're definitely taking their line from that researcher, Mark Weiser. That's the name of the guy. So Mark Weiser, who was a researcher, and his vision was that in the end you would have like this whole collection of ways to access digital information, but in the end each device has its own goal. You don't use your smartwatch to create a PowerPoint presentation. You don't use your computer to check the how long you or how fast you run your morning run, and in that sense, VR or XR headsets are going to have their own use, and they're going to be one of the way to access digital information with their own goal. And that's the interesting thing, actually, is that right now, the reason why you would want a VR headset from Meta or XR headset from Apple or any other company, it's still not clear. I mean, virtual reality headsets have been, you can find them at Fnac, and it's been like that for 15 years. Yet, I don't think that each and every one of us has one in their living room. And so,
who has a headset? Who has a VR headset? Hands up.
I don't.
So it makes so you're all good potential customers.
No, but it is true, and it is remarkable that also the idea that the success of VR will be measured with how strongly VR pervades our everyday life, which is completely absurd. I have, as I said to Eric, it's a boutade, but I have zero interest in seeing the weather report on an iMAX screen in my kitchen. This makes no sense. And also we have our phones, for example, which are connectors everywhere, which is very practical because I can still look around, I'm not disconnected, I'm not isolated, all these type of modalities. But from an artistic point of view, it's these headsets, heavy as they are, they're already a huge success actually, because you can do amazing things with them, and I don't need to wait some sort of dystopian future to confirm that in some way.
Thank you. Yeah. Eric.
And just as a silly anecdote, we once, because you talked about these things, how long can you keep them up on your head? So we wanted to have 40-hour performances. Yeah, so of course, evidently, we needed to test that before. So I was the victim to test that. I made it into 6 hours. I must say, at regular intervals, I had to go into a dark room and take it off for a while and then put it on back, so not to interrupt the experience. But the point is that after a few hours already, you really can no longer tolerate it upon your head. It's not, we thought there was a psychophysic with us, because we were thinking about radiation and heat and things like that. The simple thing was it starts aging after a while, and you can no longer bear to have it on your head. And we used medical plastics and all kind of things to make it perfectly fit to your head, but even that seemed to be a problem. So yeah, so it won't be for more than an hour.
Okay, thank you, super. I guess we have a question from the audience.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Actually, I want to see how was your experience in terms of audience experience. You know, you had performances, and the thing is that how can you measure the audience experience? Because, you know, most of the time when you're using technology, it's like a wow effect for the audience, and you cannot actually from the beginning saying that, yeah, that was amazing for the audience because they said, yeah, it was amazing. And the time needs to pass, and how do you see that? How do you see that for your audience in the long term, using the same technology as it's not a wow effect? In 10 years, maybe everyone has their own VR headset or AR headset.
Maybe Crew first, then also maybe Giusy.
Well, the answer is, of course, if I understood you well, if you speak in terms of performance, you need a kind of a dramaturgy. Because indeed, it's not enough to put a thing up on your head and to, wow, I'm here. No, so you need to create that. So there is, you would call it a story, but there's a kind of succession of things you need to do in order to have the audience where you want them to be. And the audience need to help in that way. If that is an answer to your question, but I'm not sure because, yeah. It's one of the many answers to that question.
And with regards to whether the people had like an interesting experience or not, so it is true that there's a problem there because we've already had people and we put them on headset and they say it's amazing, but they're actually in the lounge of the 3D environment thing, which makes no sense. But this is true that it has happened for people who are never in VR, and it is true that there's a wow factor. But it would be wrong, I think, to separate the wow factor from the content in a way, because this wow factor, when people have it, it opens them actually for like suggesting artistic impulses, which then all of a sudden they are very open to. And the wow factor also doesn't, as well as in my presentation, it says the wonder does not last very long. It's actually immediately gone. And it's true that afterwards people already have like a very intense moment, so they take off the headset and then they're back in reality, which is the strongest moment. But we also have talked with people sometimes weeks or months after they did the performance to actually know what they thought and to see how, and it changes. If you do an interview before and 3 months later, it can be completely different. So we actually do that.
They dream of it.
Yes.
But that's a good thing. So it's not just images and representations you saw, you were inside of something. So it goes deeper and you dream of it. So
Okay. I think that's Giusy, maybe?
Yes, we tried to measure through some questionnaires. We did an experimentation actually at the conservatory in Antwerp. So after a performance, we made a questionnaire. But in my case, for Metaface, I really experienced in reality the feedback, especially the day after when they attend the performance completely in VR. There was this wow reaction and many questions actually. And so this was a way to also explain the project and to disseminate both contents, artistic and scientific. So this was my experience.
Bruno?
Yeah, on my side, I didn't create really performances, but maybe one of the latest experiments that we did, because everything that I showed, typically we then have a few dozen users experiment with them to see whether they are valid or not, and we also rely on questionnaires like you do. There's always the wow effect every time that you use like those fancy headsets, but as you mentioned, content takes over very, 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 very quickly. That's the first thing. The second is that it's as if what the users are experimenting really talks to them, then the wow effect is going to stay. But if you don't have something interesting, or if it doesn't work, which can quickly happen if you start to create your own interfaces, then users will get frustrated or bored extremely quickly. And you can see that directly in the questionnaire. So in the end, once again, it's about content. It's about content. It's about the idea or the experience that you want to create. That's what is going to, as much from an artistic point of view than in more in terms of interaction, design.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Bruno. Thank you all. Cautious of time, laser talks are 1 hour and a half plus a few minutes. Is there any final remark, short question, statement from the audience in the room, online? Yes. So we take this and then we.
Yeah, I'd like to throw a statement to the panel, and I'm going to be frank. I think what worries me about the metaverse and about the development of the metaverse, I think ever since the Second World War and the explosion of technical innovations, these innovations are dominated by hard sciences. And the problems that are created by those solutions from hard sciences have to be solved by soft sciences and artists. So I know it's a frank statement, but I hear it a little bit in the panel here as well. Is there anything we can do to turn that around?
Okay. Who takes it quickly?
I can start. I'm mostly sorry.
You have to.
Yeah, I'm mostly from hard sciences, and that's actually the one thing. So but actually I agree with you. And the one thing that we are trying to do, especially with my research group, is actually that. So we went more and more, first in human-computer interaction, which is like, having like a digital system and then a human being, and focusing on the communication, but still a bit from the computer side. And we are pulling more and more and more in the field to the user and actually social sciences. So that's maybe a somewhat good news, is that I can see, and that's also something that I'm doing. Next researcher that I will be hiring is actually a pure social scientist, because that's what we need actually as soon as you're designing systems. So from the point of view of hard sciences, actually, if you, and I know, for example, people working in engineering departments in different universities in Belgium, well, they can go that far, but as soon as users are involved, they need what you call soft sciences, but actually which are as hard as the others, but taking the point of view of human beings at the core.
Yes, maybe from one of the artists, the final remark.
Yes, actually, I understand and I hear what you're saying, and I think it's very true. And we were in talks for a new project, and in the Industry 6, I think, of the European Union. Actually, everything is human-centered, and it's obligatory to take the soft sciences or the humanities, or however you want to call it. However, we were in talks, and this came back as a total thing that made my skin crawl, is that immediately you also understand how you can activate these things for things I completely disagree with. So I don't think, so the human-centric part is right, but I think the dichotomy between hard sciences and soft sciences is something to reassess in some way.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you to my dear panelists. Super. Thank you to the audience in the space, online. I'm not sure if I should dare to make a quick summary. I take away a positive take, a curious take from all, a conscious take that it's a challenging exercise, difficult one, no final answers, but certainly forward-leading questions, artistic research, technology. And I'm just looking forward to more and to another laser talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for our spectators here in physical world. Also, we had spectators who are following us on the internet. So thank you very much for being with us. And I would like to thank iMAL, Lucia Garcia, the director of iMAL, to help us to organize this here, and definitely for our fantastic technical crew, Dani and Yannick, who was helping us during all this streaming. Thank you very much.